Oh man, what a great way to end worship with a parent idea, and then we're introducing what we're going to talk about today with a parent idea. There must be something that the Holy Spirit wants to communicate to us about who we are to Him. And I just love that. I love that I get to continue to be the child of God that He calls me to be. That's wonderful. And I also have two girls. I do love them both equally, although my likeness of them goes up and down a lot. I do love them both the same. And I actually had the privilege of seeing my oldest and her husband. They were out here last weekend, had spent Sunday afternoon with them, had dinner with them on Monday night, and it was great to get to see them. It's been a couple of months. And then, of course, I like to connect with my younger and her husband, and they all live out in New Jersey, right? So if you live a little ways away from kids, right, you know, sometimes you don't have the privilege of living right next to each other. It takes a while, right, before you get to see each other. So we rely on technology to bridge the gap. Man, I have loved every part of their life, every stage. I have so enjoyed being dad. I've so enjoyed raising them. I've loved watching them try new things, get involved in stuff, be successful, even walk through difficult stuff because I've watched them grow. It's been so much fun. If you got kids, right, you know what we're talking about here. So wonderful. And yet, with all of that said, there's still tension in my relationship with my girls. And I can feel it. And they can feel it. And it's there. I'd like to say it's all related to the events of my life over the past few years and some of the challenges and difficulty and life stuff that I've been having to walk through. But I think if I'm really honest with myself, some of it precedes that a little bit. And I want to not just have a good relationship with my girls, I want to have a great one. I've been kind of waiting a little bit to see how and if they're going to want to talk about stuff. It's not happening, and the tension is there, and it builds. And I was back in New Jersey in January, and I could really feel it. I'd have to call or text somebody because I'd go to bed like this has been a rough night. We're trying to play games, and I could, you know what I'm talking about? I could feel that there. And so I want to resolve it if I can. As Jesus heals me, as He helps me, as He makes me whole, as He helps me be holy, I'm really wanting to get my relationships with my girls and improved. So last Monday, just 6 days ago, I asked, or maybe it was last Sunday, I asked my oldest and her husband, I said, what do you need from me so we can go forward? And just yesterday, as I was FaceTiming my youngest and her husband, I asked the same question. What do you need from me so we can improve, we can go forward? What do you need from me? That was hard. And keeping my mouth shut and listening to the answer were hard. Now, actually, we really didn't get into a conversation because mostly they're just like, well, let me think about how I'm going to get back to you about that. Okay. I wanted to start going. And they're like, no, we'll get to you. So I've discovered this is going to be a process. And I'm trying not to be anxious. And I'm really trying to go to God in prayer. And there's just some stuff that hurts. I'm trying to be a humble listener. I'm apologizing for times where I've made offense and I've hurt and I've caused pain. And I'm trying to imagine how would Jesus be, how is He with my girls? And how can I even be a something like that? I could have just sat back. I could have just continued to wait for them to want to say something. I decided, I got to do this. I want this, so I got to go for it. Why? Why am I being the initiator? Why am I going through the pain? Why am I going through the drama of it? Because I am dedicated to my daughters. I am dedicated to them. Man, they may not always think it, but I'm going to do what it takes to be a great dad no matter what. So I'm going to go for it. And dedication sometimes means that we go through difficult moments and pain and frustration for the sake of the dedication that we have to something or someone else, whether it's a sport, whether it's a person, whatever that is. When we're dedicated, man, we put in the effort, don't we? They may not always think that I'm dedicated, but I'm going to be there for them every day of their life. I'm going to help them when they ask. I'm going to be there when they hurt. I'm going to be there when they stumble. I want to be there when they have a need. And I am learning to be a better listener so that they can give me feedback, so I can do that even better. But man, I wish I could be half as dedicated as Jesus is to me. God shows me his dedication like no other. And I'm trying to learn from the ways that Jesus dedicates himself to me, to us as a people, to be that guy to them. To learn from him so I can in turn be that for my daughters. While I am a child of God, my Father is dedicated to me, that I can be dedicated to my girls. Because I'm going to make mistakes. Thus the tension. I wish I was a perfect dad. How many of you guys wish you were a perfect parent? I'd love to be able to stand here and say, I'm that guy, and I can write the books, and I can... And I can't. I have a good relationship with my girls. They both serve Jesus. They both love God. Yet we're still trying to make that work. But he's perfect. God, my Father, is perfect. Jesus is perfect to me, and his dedication is perfect every time. And that's our final D in this series that we're in. Not only is he our King, and not only is he our incarnate Lord, like we talked about last Sunday, but he is our dedicated King, and he is our dedicated Lord. So much so that he came to be flesh, like we talked about, like Dustin told us. He is dedicated enough to be right here in the middle of it, in the thick of it with us, in the sin and brokenness of our life, experience it with us so that we might know his Father, our Father, and have a life with him. Isn't that good news, huh? His dedication goes that far. That's who I want to be dedicated, and his dedication is like that. So what are we talking about? What's dedication? What is this idea? What's this concept? Dedication. Another word that we might think of dedication would be the word commitment or devotion. But there's another idea of dedication that, as I began to really look at it this week, kind of sprung out at me, and that's the idea of wholeheartedness. Well, how does that tie in? That means his dedication to me springs from the inside of who God is in his love for me, and not just merely out of duty. Does that make sense? His dedication isn't to me, well, because, this is what I do, and this is what I signed up for as God, so I got to follow through. I don't want to do it, don't feel like doing it, but all right, well, here we go. I got to, do my part. No, there's a wholeheartedness of like his whole entire being and his whole entire self and all that he is with his love, of course, kind of just pours out to us in being dedicated to us. And that's good stuff. That wholeheartedness changes the motive for me, the idea for me of how Jesus is dedicated to us. So his dedication then, man, that wholeheartedness drives it. And dedication of God keeps going when others will quit. Dedication of this kind stays close when others will distance. Dedication holds firm when others are going to falter. This dedication goes the extra mile when others will just do the minimum. This dedication always gives when you need. It always loves when you fail. It always responds when you call, and it always works for your good. Can you say amen to that? Amen. I got to tell you, I have learned this. I was talking with Jonathan about it right before this morning, and Matt, when you go through the fire of life, you're going to find out quickly who's dedicated to you, who's committed to you, and who's not. Because those who are dedicated to you are going to lean in, and those who aren't are going to back off. I mean, they may not lean in the way I want them to. Sometimes my parents don't lean in the way I want them to, but they're still dedicated to me. I've learned this firsthand on both sides of it, but especially being the one who wonders, is that is that person going to walk with me through this, or is this person, they may no longer be in my life? And over the last 2 years, I've lost some very, very close people because they just can't deal with my fire. But Jesus never left, never abandons, never gives up, always comes in, always is close. I think of the story from the Old Testament in the book of Daniel, of the three Hebrews, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they refuse to worship the golden idol that is there, and they're like, we are not going to bend, we are not going to bow, we are not going to worship, only God we worship. And the consequence of that decision is that they're going to get thrown into a hot fire furnace. So they do that. It's so hot so that those who throw them in actually die. And they stand back and they watch, and pretty soon, in the middle of the story, you hear this comment from someone. They go, wait, didn't we throw 3 people in this fire? I see, wait, 1, 2, 3, 4. And there's a 4th in the fire, and his face is like the face of the Lord. There is one, Jesus, who will go through every fire we ever face, every fire we ever go through. That is dedication. When we're in the middle of it, we're in the fire, when we're going through the tough stuff, there he is. Is that not good news about our Jesus? He is dedicated to you and to me. Let's look at some other stories. Let's move to the gospel where we see the best version of Jesus, the best version of the Son of God himself. And I want to look at a story from each gospel this morning with you and see, what do we learn from this story about the dedication of Jesus? The first one is the calling of Levi, who is Matthew, the apostle Matthew. But in this text, we call him Levi. It's in Mark 2, 15 through 17. And before this story, now Mark 2, so it's really early in the gospel. But before we get to this story, we have to know that the writer of Mark is already showing us how dedicated Jesus is. First, we see he's dedicated to his ministry and his mission. When he comes and he goes to John the Baptist and he gets baptized, and then he heads off into the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights to fast and pray and just talk to his Father. And then at the end there, we see his dedication as he is faithful through the temptations that come his way. So we see he is dedicated to his mission, he is dedicated to his ministry, and off he goes. And then as he comes out, he calls a couple of people to follow him. He goes to Peter's house, and his mother-in-law is really sick, and Jesus takes her hand, and he raises her up, and he makes her well, and he restores her physically. And then, of course, like a good mother-in-law, right, she cooks him dinner. But we see that Jesus is also not just dedicated to his own thing, but he was dedicated to his followers. Peter, your mother-in-law is sick. She's not well. She's actually, this is very serious. Man, I got you. Let's make this well. Let's restore your mother-in-law. And right there, this new follower of Jesus is like, wow, that you would do that for my family, that you would do that for me. Yeah, Jesus is dedicated to his followers, 100%. So then, shortly here, now in chapter 2, we get into the story of the calling of Matthew, or Levi. And he has called him, and Levi was a tax collector, not well liked. A guy who, well, for all intents and purposes, the Jews think he's a sellout. He's a traitor, right? Because he's working for the Romans, who occupy the area, tax the people to pay for the occupation. And so this guy, and he cheats, man. He cheats everybody. Here's what you really owe, and he pockets the difference. So everybody knows it, but they don't have a choice in the matter. So he's not really well liked. But Jesus says, you come follow me. I don't care what you do right now. You can follow me. Life's going to be different. Life is going to be different from now on. So we see this happen, and then Levi responds by inviting Jesus to a dinner. And that's where we pick this up. In Mark 2, verse 15, it says, later Levi invited Jesus and his disciples to his home as dinner guests, along with many tax collectors and other disreputable sinners. There were many people of this kind among Jesus' followers. And I would have to raise my hand with that too. But when the teachers of religious law, who were Pharisees, saw him eating with the tax collectors and other sinners. They asked the disciples, "Why does he eat with such scum?" One of my favorite lines in the Bible. And when Jesus heard this, he told them, "You know, healthy people, they don't need a doctor. Sick people do. So I've come not to call those who think they are righteous, but those who know they're sinners. Those who know they cannot live life perfectly, that they're broke, that they sin, and that we only with Jesus can we get things right. That's why I came." What do we see here? That Jesus is dedicated to the broken and to the sinner. 100%. See, when everything is going really well, it's easy to believe that Jesus is dedicated to me. Of course he is. I'm doing good. Of course he is. I'm not sinning. Seriously, I hear people talk like that. I hear preachers talk like that. I'm like, I do. I need Jesus every day because life's tough. I mean, I'm trying to be more like Jesus all the time, but it's a struggle sometimes. And I would call myself a sinner who is saved by the grace of Jesus. So Jesus is dedicated to you and to me, to those of us who know, we know where we stand without him. He is dedicated to those who sit here today, this morning, and are out there listening or watching right now and say, "Man, if you just knew how bad my life was right now, or some of the choices I've just made or have made in my past." No, I'm telling you right now, Jesus is dedicated to you. Why does he eat with such scum? Because he's dedicated to those people. And he wants to have fellowship. He wants to have a relationship with you. Now that's good news. That's good news. That's good stuff, man. I am not here to try to say anything is wrong with any of us. I'm trying to tell you how good Jesus is despite who we are, and how great he is because he's dedicated to me and you, and how that makes us rise above everything because Jesus is there with us. And that is wonderful news this morning. Amen. He doesn't turn his back. When other people will, he never will. But Jesus, you know what I just did? Yeah, I know. So come on, let's go get this right. He's going to take my hand. He doesn't turn his back. He takes my hand. He takes your hand through all of it. Will he? Yes, he does. Will he? Can he? Yes, he does. Yes, he will. We also see that Jesus is dedicated to giving us a life. There are times that I just look at Jesus and I just have to laugh. Because the life he is giving me is so much fun and so good. Jesus is so good. And when you've gone through the fire and you come out and you're beginning to stop smelling so bad of smoke, you can begin to look at Jesus and say, "Man, your dedication to me is so good." I mean, I'm still walking through stuff, but Jesus is so good. Let's go to another story. Let's look at another time where Jesus' dedication makes a difference. That's of this guy named Zacchaeus. And it's in Luke this time, in Luke chapter 19, verses 6 through 10. And Zacchaeus, again, was a tax collector. Another one of the scum. Another one of the disreputables. Another one of those that everybody's going to avoid. And Zacchaeus had another issue, though. See, being a tax collector wasn't his only thing. He was also, well, short. And so he's short and nobody likes him. So he's going to have a tough time. And so here comes Jesus into his town and he come walking through this one street. They know kind of where Jesus is going to come at. And so they're all lining the streets because they want to get a glimpse of this guy who works miracles. And Zacchaeus, he's like, he's as interested as anybody. So he wants to catch a glimpse of Jesus, but there is nobody's going to let him in to come see. They're all going to like just stand shoulder to shoulder. And he's so short, he can't, he's like putting a short guy in the pictures. You're never going to see him in the photo, right? You got to put the short people up front. They're not going to let him up front. You go to the back. So of all the undignified things that Zacchaeus does, he climbs a tree. Now remember, they don't wear pants back then. So this is a very undignified place to be, is up in a tree. All right? So he's climbed this tree. So the guy's just a mess, and he's a wreck, and he's up there to see Jesus. And Jesus walks by, and he stops because there's this dude up in this tree. And he looks up at Zacchaeus, and of all things, he knows his name. Zacchaeus calls him by name and says, Zacchaeus, why don't you go come down from that tree? Because you know what? I want to go have lunch with you at your house today. Can you imagine his heart when this guy gets looked at, accepted by grace-filled Jesus? And he comes down, and it says here in verse 6, Zacchaeus quickly climbed down and took Jesus to his house in great excitement and joy. But the people were displeased. Right? His friends, his neighbors, everybody's like, he's gone to be the guest of a notorious sinner, they grumbled. Jesus didn't care. He's dedicated to us. When the push comes to shove, Jesus is dedicated to us. Meanwhile, Zacchaeus stood before the Lord and said, I'm going to give half my wealth to the poor, Lord. And if I've cheated someone on their taxes, which he had, I'm going to respond and I'm going to repay them 4 times as much and make restitution. And Jesus responds, salvation has come to this home today, for this man has shown himself to be a true son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and save those who are lost. Jesus is dedicated to those who live with shame. Jesus is dedicated to those of us who are going to hide behind people or go climb the tree or not want to be seen because we feel we are bad. And I'm here to tell you that Jesus that's dedicated to you and to me knows your name today. And he accepts you today right where you are. Up on the tree or not, behind the crowd and hiding, it doesn't matter. You're accepted. This dedication goes that far. And so his grace reaches out and he calls you right now, maybe even by the Spirit, you just hear him say your name in a whisper. And you can begin to respond. And Jesus says, man, I want to hang with you. I want to be with you. I want to be in your life. I want to walk with you and talk with you and be a part of your day. I know you struggle. I know you go through stuff. I know life can be difficult right now, or maybe you're having a great time with life. I just want to be with you and let things change because I love you. Jesus is dedicated to accepting us and blessing us in ways that we just don't even think we deserve. And Jesus goes, oh, yeah, you do. Yeah, you do, because I love you. And I'm going to be with you. And your life will be different. Looking to another story in the book of Gospel of Matthew, Jesus' dedication to us extends beyond the minimum. Sometimes we think that those people who would be dedicated to us, have you ever tried to do something, start something new, but you just put in the minimum effort? How far do you get? Sort of, kind of, right? But you're not going to be any virtuoso. It's the minimum effort's not going to get you very far. Jesus doesn't ever put in minimum efforts. He goes all the way. There's this beautiful story here in Matthew chapter 8. It says, starting in just verse 1, it says, large crowds at this time were following Jesus as he came down the mountainside. And suddenly a man with leprosy approached him, the skin disease of some sort that highly contagious. The thing with lepers is, you cannot be around everybody else. If you have leprosy, you are, by Jewish law at the day of Jesus' time, you have to be outcast. You have to be ostracized. You have to be segregated from society. You can't be with your family. You can't work your job. You can't be in the city. You can't be a part of a social club. You can't do whatever you would do with anybody else. The only people that you now can associate with are other lepers. Period. You're done. And there's this leper, and he approaches Jesus, which he shouldn't have done. Isn't it great that we can approach Jesus this morning? And he kneels before him and he says, Lord, if you are willing, you can heal me and make me clean. And the subtext, give me everything back that I've lost because of it. But because of this disease, because of what I'm going through, because of the fire I'm in, I've lost it all. So make me clean, because then I can go back. I can go back home. And Jesus reached out, get this, and touched him. And he said, I am willing. Be healed. Instantly, the leprosy disappeared. And Jesus said to him, don't tell anybody about this. Instead, go to the priest. Let him examine you. Take along the offering required in the law of Moses for those who've been healed of leprosy. This then, when you do your work, your healing work, will be a public testimony that you have been cleansed. I'm here to tell you this morning, Jesus is dedicated to the outcast. If you feel ostracized, lonely, separated, that you've lost everything, Jesus is dedicated to you. He is dedicated to touching for those who long for relationship. He's dedicated to our healing for those who long for wholeness. And he is dedicated to restoring for those who feel like, man, I just wish I had more community and purpose in my life. And he is dedicated to that. Now, we may have our work to do. I've had my work to do. We've all had our work to do. Right? I see a therapist. I've got a spiritual director. I've got a core of guys I meet with. I've got my work to do. I met with my girls this week and said, what do you need from me to go forward? My work to do, to be whole, to show the healing in my life. But you know why I had the courage to do that with my kids? Because Jesus is dedicated to me. All right, Jesus, it's time. Let's go do this thing. I can do this because Jesus, you help me. That's how, because he is with me. So Jesus, help me do this. One more story. During his sham of a trial, right after he was arrested, Jesus had warned the disciples they would all leave. And he specifically told Peter, one of his closest, you're going to deny me three times, dude. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Yeah, you are. No, I'm so close, man. I'm your buddy. I'm not going to deny you. I'm with you. Jesus is like, yeah, no, bud, before a rooster crows 3 times, you're going to deceive, you're going to have, before a rooster crows, you're going to have denied me 3 times. Sure enough, that story comes true, that prediction. After that 3rd time, then he hears the rooster crow. Peter, it says, he wept bitterly. I mean, he bawled, right? Everything crashed. Have you been in a moment where everything crashes and your emotions just overtake you? And you're like, golly, did I just fail here? And so Peter is sulking in his sorrow of his failure. And after his resurrection, Jesus comes and sees Peter and some others. They're back to fishing. And Jesus shows them how to get a big haul, a big catch of fish. And they come in and they're cooking a meal. And Jesus comes up to Peter. And as I envision it, I envision Jesus getting right down with Peter, right over where they're cooking. And he and Peter just one-on-one, mano a mano. And we're at John 21, starting with verse 15. After breakfast, Jesus asked Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, Peter, you know I love you. Then feed my lambs, he tells him. Jesus then repeats the question a 2nd time. Simon, son of John, do you love me? Yes, Lord, Peter says, you know I love you. How many times have you said that prayer? Yes, I do. Then take care of my sheep, he said. The 3rd time, Jesus asked, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And Peter then has heard that Jesus is asking the question a 3rd time. He says, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. And Jesus said, then feed my sheep. Jesus is dedicated to the failed. Those of us who could raise our hand and say, yep, I have failed. And the next time I fail, Jesus is dedicated to us. He is dedicated to restore us. He is dedicated to bring us back on track. He is dedicated to putting our lives back in order. He is dedicated to healing us. He is dedicated to all that. And his dedication in all these ways that we're talking about this morning means that he approaches every relationship wholeheartedly with all he is, all of the resources of heaven, all of his love, all of his grace, all of his mercy. He has already invested everything on the cross. He is dedicated to you and to me. And we can just take that and rest on that, build on that, rely on that whenever we go through the fire. His dedication to me means I could trust him. You could trust him. Not just have faith in him, not just to believe him, but trust him. All right, I'll do my work. Okay, you're going to do your part. I'm going to trust you with this, Jesus. We could trust him because he's never going to let me down. I will, but he won't. I could follow him because he's never led me to a bad place. Oh, I've veered off plenty of times. I've got myself in some situations, and Jesus takes me by the hand. Come on, this way. Here we go. Out of great love, the perfect dad, the perfect father. And I can lean on him. In other words, he's going to support my heart. And I can just spend time with him and pour out my heart, my life, and my stuff, and my junk, and my emotions, and my fears. And then, like we sing, I don't have to fear because I'm a child of God. And I could talk to my girls without fear because he's dedicated to me and I'm a child of God. And that's the best news, the best thing in the world, because there is nothing like it in the world for us but him. Guys, man, if you come on back. Who is this Jesus? You might be asking yourself that this morning. Who is this Jesus? Some of you are like, yeah, that's my Jesus. Yeah, that's my guy. That's the one I serve. That's the one I'm worshiping. That's the one I love with abandoned heart. That's the one that I just want to give everything to in my life. Who is it? Some of you might say, but who is this Jesus that he would be so dedicated to a fickle, sinful, broken, faith-struggling, wayward, confused, on again, off again, rebellious, prideful part of his creation? Well, like me. Who is this Jesus that eats with the scum? Who is this Jesus that accepts the cheat and the fraud? Who is this Jesus that risks touching the untouchables? Who is this Jesus that brings us back from the brink? No matter who I am, no matter what I've done, and no matter why, he is dedicated to us, to you, and to me. He is dedicated to come. Every time you ask, Dustin's put it this way, all we have to do is just say thank you. What am I thanking him for? That he's been so dedicated, that he's paid every price for me to have life again after what I think is death. So I just say thank you. And the minute I do, he's dedicated to pour out. He's dedicated to teach and to show and to heal and to accept and to love. He is dedicated to save. He is dedicated to restore. And he is dedicated to bless. That's the Jesus we serve. That's the Jesus that loves us this morning. And I would just like to pray over you that you would feel the dedication of Jesus as much and as deeply as I do. This dedication of this dedicated King, this dedicated incarnate Son of God. Would you just bow your heads with me quickly as I pray over you this morning? Jesus, we are so thankful for your dedication in our life. We are so thankful that you pour everything that you are into the worst of us at times and the best of us at others. And you go through it all, and you went through it all, and you continue to walk through us every moment and every day with unconditional love of the Father because you're dedicated to us. And so we say, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you that you will never stop, never stop, never stop with your love. You will never stop with your dedication. You will never stop pouring out into us because you are there and you are faithful, always there, Jesus. And so we just raise our hands and we raise our hearts to you and say, thank you. Yes, I need that dedicated Jesus in my life. wherever we are, with whatever we're struggling with, we say yes. We say yes. Help us. With all that you are, we give ourselves to you for that.